everyone. Welcome to the City of Frankfort Board of Commissioners February work session. Today is February 13th, and I'll ask the clerk to call for the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Present.
Commissioner Unger? Present. Commissioner Waldridge?
Present.
Commissioner May?
Present.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Present. And we have a quorum. We'll start with ceremonial and recognition. Yes, Commissioner Unger.
Bobby's playing something, sorry.
Right now.
Yes.
Is this what you wanted, Commissioner Unger?
No,
Okay.
I have another announcement.
Okay. What is your announcement?
Miss Blair Hecker had her son, so I have a third baby announcement since our paid family leave. We've
His
got
baby
a
should be
Wyatt
up.
Edward Hecker. We are so excited. There he is. Yeah.
Maybe what?
So enjoy this time with Mr. Wyatt.
Any other ceremonial or recognition, Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes, the playing of the national anthem that usually comes before business, so that's why I was trying to stop.
On a work session, it doesn't.
We did it last year at the work session.
Okay.
It would-
I didn't, okay.
I also just made an invite to KSU to come to the voting session. To
Yes,
see it
yes,
as
and
well.
I invited them as well.
Oh, great.
Yes.
I would defer until. This
Thank
is
you,
played.
Kyle, I appreciate that.
Is every voice sing till earth and heaven rings, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the faith that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of the new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kiara Sheard, and I would like to congratulate National President Derek Johnson, Chairman Leon Russell, and Vice Chair Karen Boykin Towns. Congratulations to all of you. I celebrate you and I honor you on kicking off the 111th Annual Conference of the NAACP.
Thank you. And with that said, it is Black History Month. Though we have 28 days in February to celebrate the Black history, it is America's history, and we shall be recognized 365 days a year. And I just applaud that my community and allowing me to sit here as an African-American woman, being the first African-American woman elected in my position. And I enjoy and just honored to be able to serve in this capacity, and for many that have paved the way for me and many to come past. And with that being said, my other item would be congratulations to Kentucky State University. They beat both of their girls and their men's basketball team, won both of their games this past weekend against Rivalry Central State, and they were both exciting games. The stands were packed. There were some people there. I think Michael Mueller, I saw Michael Mueller there. Sherry Sebastian, Magistrate Sebastian was there. I saw the mayor's wife. I
was there.
Okay, I didn't see you, but I saw her. I think we saw everyone in the line for refreshments, but that's where I saw her. And so I was just glad to see so many community people come out and just support. And it was just a wonderful time. So I look forward to seeing our relationship with Kentucky State continuing to thrive.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other? Commissioner Thompson?
First, I think it's very wise that the commission has moved the microphone away from me. It'll prevent me from talking long. I would like to honor my first Valentine, my mother, who is been my rock since I was a little kid. Is an adopted kid that her and my father took in. I know Commissioner Waldridge understands adoption as well. They took in a child they didn't have to, and so I would like to wish my mother happy Valentine's Day, and also to my beautiful wife, who obviously I can't do anything without. So, and everyone can acknowledge that. So, I want to honor her and wish Jen a happy Valentine's Day as well.
Now we all have to do it.
Now,
He
Happy
set the
Valentine's.
standard.
Happy Valentine's. All right, do we have any citizens' comments if we're finished with ceremonial and recognition? I know we have a couple. All right, thank you. All right, Dennis Ledford. And I'll invite you up, and you're welcome to come to the podium here. We'll give you 5 minutes, and just state your name and
All right, I don't think you probably need that, I'm pretty loud. My name is Dennis Ledford. I wear several hats in our community. The one I'm here representing tonight is as a board member of the Franklin County Youth Football Rams. Last summer, we approached Parks and Rec about possibly being next in line for the facilities at Herod Field, and we understand that they have disbanded and they didn't have any activities there last year. So we are asking to be considered to take over the use of Herod Field for our program. We have 150, anywhere from 100 to 150 young men and young ladies who cheer and play football. We have, 20 to 30 coaches. We make sure all of our coaches are heads up certified for safety, CPR certified. We also run criminal background checks on all of our coaches. We run we're a member of the Louisville Youth Football League, and so being able to have another facility will allow us to host some events, allow our kids more opportunities within the city here to compete and display their skills. So if you guys have any questions about our organization, I would leave the rest of our time to answer those questions for you. Yes, ma'am.
When does your season start for practices and things for us to know
So
how quickly
our-
we may need to move?
Yes, ma'am. Our season, it begins, we will do a little bit. We like to ease our kids in to equipment. So, we do some short, simple conditioning drills in the month of June. Okay, those will be very far and few between. After the 4th of July and all that gets through in July, we kind of start practicing, and then our games will start in the beginning of August there. And we usually play on Saturdays, and at some points, we have our kids that maybe don't get to play as much in the big games on Saturdays. We'll have like a JV version for the less inexperienced kids on some Sunday afternoons. So, but June, July, and then we steep on through into November.
Yes.
sorry.
Oh, no. I was just looking at
First of all, thanks for being here, Mr. Ledford. You all have several different age groups, right?
Yes, sir.
That you provide for. I think when I was looking at one time earlier, trying to convince my kid to be a football player, didn't work out. You have 3 different teams that you.
Yes, sir. We have 3 age groups. We have 7U, 9U, and 11U. So that carries our kids all the way up into the 6th. Some kids will be able to play when they're in 7th grade, but most of them will go on to play to their respectful middle schools around the area. So yeah, we have 3 levels of teams. Yes, sir.
And if I'm correct, you all actually played in the national championship last year for the 7U.
We played in a national tournament. It's a national tournament. It's an invitational only tournament. It's in Sevierville, Tennessee, and we haven't won it yet, but we've been runner-up a few times and in the semifinals in several different age groups along the line. So we do go down there, and we take only our teams. Some area teams, they'll form an all-star team. We take our kids that we've coached all year, and we go and compete in the national tournament. Yes, sir.
And I finished this off by just showing out the importance of this. You all recertify your equipment every single year, correct?
Yeah, we recondition our equipment every year, which is actually above.
At your cost, correct?
Yeah,
correct.
at our cost. It's actually above the, what they require, but we do it every year because this day and age, parents are very more concerned about safety than probably our parents was when we were all young. So we
That's
recondition every year.
clear.
We won't
Yeah.
find it. You won't find any helmets that are aging out in ours. You know,
Yeah.
you get 5 to 7 years out of the helmet. We're usually replacing ours around 3 to 4. Trying to stay above the game and kind of go above and beyond because we want our kids to be safe, and they can't be good players in the future if they're not safe when they begin. So.
Speaking of those players in the future, you've had about 1,000 kids go through your program since you all have split off.
Man, I would hate to tell you 1,000, but it's got to be close. You know, I think my son was the last. He was the last one who couldn't play in our league, and so he's 18 now. So he would have been 11. So it's been 6 or 7 years. You know, we're averaging anywhere 100, 150 to 6, 7 years. So, you know, now some kids leave, some kids come in. So probably around 1,000, yes, sir.
About half of those have played high school football since then.
Yeah, several of them have played middle school. Those groups have went on to be very successful. Like I said, several different. We have kids that have played in Woodford County Middle Schools, Anderson County Middle Schools, Frankfort Independent, Western Hill, Bondurant, Franklin County, Scott County, Royal Springs. Kids from all over coming into our community to be part of our program.
Last thing I'll ask is not really a question, but Coach Ledford, I want to congratulate you on your son signing and receiving a recommendation to the United States Army Academy,
Yes,
West
sir.
Point,
Appreciate it.
and he'll be playing football, linebacker, and defensive end, I believe,
Yes, sir.
is what they're looking at.
Yep.
And as somebody who went through the rigorous program to receive an appointment to the Air Force Academy, I commend him for all he is willing to sacrifice for our country, and I commend you as a good father.
Well, I appreciate it. I won't take too much credit for it. I tried to talk him out just to make sure it was his idea. He was really sold on the future of that and that lifetime of service. So I do appreciate your kind words there.
And yes, Commissioner Mack.
Thank you, sir, for being here.
Yep.
Quick question. What exactly, walk me through, aside from needing the field, what other resources are you going to need during this time? Will you be looking for places to store equipment? Are you doing?
So, you know, most of our coaches, okay, or a lot of our parents, they were part of the FYFL at one time. So we're kind of aware that there's a concession stand and that there is a building there where they stored equipment in that. So, and the bathrooms and things. So we would like to have full access to all that so we can successfully have concessions, successfully store something, successfully use a press box, but and then parking and then the surface for the kiddos.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So in short, we're just looking to kind of have you come in and take over that agreement that was there. You're looking for
Yes, sir.
the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, Commissioner
Yes.
Rogers. Hold on, one more.
Oh.
I just was going to
Okay.
ask if we could have staff look into this so we can just make this an easy turn.
Exactly.
As there is a contract, is the contract that we could just send to them to look over, since they're asking, they were next in line, that we can just go ahead and put their name on that? What else do we need to do?
If I understand correctly, and the Parks Director does know a little bit more about this than I do,
Okay.
but I think discussions are already being had,
Okay.
and we are trying to work out a few less details, and we'll be able to bring something forth to you all before too long.
Great.
I'm probably short on time, but you know, we are insured and we have
That's a
all the
great
needed documents
answer.
to make this a smooth
Wonderful.
transition. So, but we wanted to offer a time to formally discuss it and then offer any questions you guys may have about our organization.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Ledford.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
We're on
Thank
it.
you.
And next, Ed Poe. Welcome back.
And Mayor, you may have said this, but if I may, we are limited to 5 minutes, and at the 1 minute mark for any and all who are speaking, I will say 1 minute, so don't be surprised when you hear that.
Takes me a little longer to get up here.
You're fine.
Don't count that. Most of you know me. For those who don't, my name is Poe, Ed Poe. I make things happen. A couple of years ago, when I was president of the Frankfort, Franklin County Community Council. They were kind enough to give me 2 minutes at the start of each meeting. I had my own little personal soapbox that I could stand on and rant about the two things that I thought were probably the most detrimental to these United States: race relations and climate control. These two things still exist today. Unfortunately, a lot of people only think about race relations during February, Black History Month. Forrest trying to change that. We want you to start thinking about race relations every month of the year. It's that important. I was a little disappointed, and I could be mistaken, but when I believe there was a meeting about the state of the community that was held, am I correct?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure race relations was on that agenda. It should have been. It has to be. Every time we talk about the community, somebody's got to talk about race relations. It's the core of our problems. This country was built on the back and the sweat of the African American slave. It was because of the exports of the cotton, of the tobacco, of the molasses, of the rice, that this country prospered and grew, and the wealth came in, and we were able to do all of these things. But it was based on a system that was absolutely wrong. And I like to correct what I think is a misconception about race relations. Race relations, racism, segregation, it's not so much about black versus white as it is wrong versus right. Okay? Early on, you had kings in Africa who captured their fellow countrymen, their fellow tribemen, and sold them into slavery. Now, these were black people selling black people. So it wasn't about color, it was about getting rid of a problem, an enemy, someone that you wanted to get moved out. And unfortunately, a lot of the misconception about race comes from the fact that a lot of people not only don't understand black history, they don't understand white history. They don't understand about the people that stood with the other blacks, put their life on the line along with the other blacks, and fought against slavery. Okay? Ask somebody to name 3 people in Kentucky, 3 white people that stood up against slavery. See what your answer is. Most of the people you talk to cannot do that.
1 minute.
Thank you. Let me switch over now to the topic that I really want to talk about. This is the one that we have no control over. It has control over us. Climate control. Okay? There is a tipping point, folks. There is a tipping point. I do not know when it is, but it's out there and it's getting closer. The signs are there. We're not paying attention to those signs. I did a little experiment on my own, and I put together, I'm not going to dump these because then I'd have to pick them up, but this is just 3 weeks worth of these little non-biodegradable plastic bags, single-use bags that I have accumulated. And this isn't all. I've got the back seat of my car full of these things.
That's time.
a lot of these things go into the recycle, but some of them make it into our filtration plant, our streams, our lakes, our oceans. And they are part of the problem that we are destroying this very earth upon which we have been lucky enough to have as our own. And unfortunately, we're not going to have it very much longer. Mother Nature has a way of dealing with species that are harmful to her.
Are you asking us to revisit the reusable bag?
Absolutely,
We'll
absolutely.
go ahead and
That's
do that.
exactly what I want. Anna Marie Rosen, I think, has a good idea, and I'm asking you to give this your most serious consideration, because it's something, if I am one person living alone and I can generate this, you can't drive across town without seeing plastic bags flowing across the street. They're out there, and they're getting into our wastewater, they're getting into the filtration plants, they're getting into it all over, and they're destroying the ecosystem. So,
Thank you, Ed and Mr. Poe. And any discussion or questions for Mr. Poe since he's here? No.
Sorry, ran out of time.
We'll consider it. Yeah, we'll-
thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate the time.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to staff reports.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to welcome Eric Cockley, our planning director, up to discuss updating the parking ordinance. This has been a multi-year process, beginning in 2020, when we hired consultants to make recommendations for our parking study. And just want to say thanks to Eric and his team and our parking advisory group for developing the new parking manual, suggested recommended changes that will support public safety and economic development in our downtown. Eric, do you mind? The microphone is, yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
All right, and start. So we've been discussing working on downtown parking management, as Laura mentioned, for a couple of years now. As some of you may remember, we completed a parking study with Walter Consultants at the end of 2021, and in that study contains several recommendations about how to move forward managing our parking, particularly as downtown thankfully continues to be reinvested in and we get additional residential users and hopefully lots of visitors and things. So following that, we procured the services of a comprehensive downtown parking manager operator. For the first time, as far as I'm aware, to operate both our garage and then ultimately handle on-street parking enforcement for us, so we could have kind of a one-stop shop with some professionals to help us with that. As part of all that, as Laura mentioned, we started, and this is one of the recommendations of Walker's study, was to start this informal parking advisory group, which is a group of downtown parking stakeholders, both residents, elected officials, some of the other partner agencies, tourism, chamber, DFI, that kind of thing, to use as a workshop to bounce ideas off as we move forward back into some kind of parking enforcement and just an active management of our downtown parking. So that group, along the side of staff work on the ordinance changes, which you guys have a first reading of this evening, largely talked about those policies and procedures as it relates to downtown parking, and in doing so produced the parking manual, which we've referenced in the ordinance. That the parking manual will be the central sort of policy document for our on-street parking and managing the parking garage and those kind of things, so much more user-friendly. The idea is to have that so people don't have to try to read through a lengthy municipal ordinance. They can check that out. Maps of where the 2-hour parking is, where the unregulated parking is, things of that nature. So, and I've shared that with you all. As part of this too, we've talked a lot about outreach and messaging and making sure that we're actually telling people what the rules are, because I think over the years past, that wasn't actively done. We didn't have a parking webpage, on the city's webpage. There weren't maps available so that the public or visitors or folks like Robin could tell visitors, hey, these are the areas you can park and you can't park, and is it Monday, Friday, or is it Monday, Saturday, is it 8 to 5? Those kinds of things. So we haven't put it up yet, but Jordan in my office built a parking specific webpage where we put all of that information. Those other partner agencies can link directly to that then, and we'll have one good clearinghouse. So everybody can understand the rules and know how to interact with Laz Parking, our operator, and pay a ticket if necessary, or hopefully purchase parking in the parking garage, things of that nature. So some of the other things that we've been sharing with the parking advisory group that we've been doing as part of our onboarding of Laz is, of course, while our on-street parking enforcement, the focus is not to generate revenue, it's to actively manage it. But the garage, on the other hand, we would very much obviously like it to be financially sustainable if possible. So working towards that goal with the operator, we've done some garage improvements and have others lined up. Obviously, since they came on, they've worked very hard to try to keep it clean and graffiti free, which is its own challenge, particularly until we get it really widely used, particularly by residential parkers. They'll be in there at all times of day. It's a bit of a challenge. The elevator, which was previously not functional, has been repaired. We have a maintenance contract with an elevator company through Laz to keep that operational. Later this month, new LED lighting throughout the garage will be installed, and if anyone's driven over during the evening to see the current state of the garage, it's understandable why some people wouldn't feel comfortable parking there, but we're going to correct that. As part of their onboarding, new signage in the garage so you know how to purchase parking. It's all online, it's app-based. And the old equipment, you may have noticed if you've been over, that used to have gates and the little sort of security shack at the main entrance. We pulled that out. The street department did a great job with that. I think they were pretty excited. They're usually having to build things they don't get to demolish very often. So those guys, I think, enjoyed that work. And they will be coming back at some point to restripe that entrance. It'll be much easier to get in and out of, particularly for larger vehicles, because I don't know if anyone here has used it before, but it was pretty tight. Also, did some tree trimming. The riverbank on the riverside had some trees growing up onto the garage, and just generally was kind of making a nice hiding space for people to either throw rubbish and garbage or attempt to camp out. So we've got that cleaned up, as well as the landscape islands along the Lewis Ferry Alley, or Lewis Street, not Lewis Ferry. Clean that up a bit. It'd be nice to come back another, in the fall and consider additional landscape improvements there to really gussy it up. But the parks did that for us. And we've got some cameras installed throughout the garage, and more will be coming so that can be monitored. Both myself, Chief Bowman, and the parking operator have access to that app, so they can check videos, whatever happens in the garage. We have that access. So if we have vandalism or theft or anything like that. As I mentioned, in addition to the website, we've talked a lot about outreach as we begin transitioning back to enforcement, and also to hopefully market the parking garage. So we'll be working on a social media campaign, thankfully. Blair, before she went on leave, did prepare some really nice kind of poster type graphics that we can now use over the course of the next month or two to share with the public about the rules and the prices and how to interact with our parking operator. So we'll be working on those. The first month that we kind of start enforcement again with Laz, the goal has been to treat it kind of as an educational campaign. So as we're pushing out information, there'll also be, when they are ticketing people, providing like an educational pamphlet on it. Hey, you overparked, here's what the rule is, this is why you're getting this notice. So we don't kind of sneak it on folks and let them know that this is coming, and that there will be a point at which when, tickets will be issued for overparking or illegal parking, and we do expect those to be paid, which was inconsistent in the past. Another thing street department's helping us out with here, as I mentioned, we've got a range of different parking signage around downtown, different little 15-minute zone over here for some reason that somebody put up 20 years ago, maybe another 30-minute zone over there. Some 2-hour parking signs that reference Monday through Friday, some that reference Monday through Saturday, so we're going to clean that up. So they're all consistent, so we're not confusing people about which way it is. As you would have seen in the parking manual, we also included, since a large part of the motivation for this whole exercise has been to manage how our parking users use our on-street and off-street parking. And the best way we can make sure that we have good on-street parking provided for our businesses and for visitors is to try to encourage, particularly your residential users, to consider getting off the street and getting into the parking garage. So the Parking Advisory Group came up with a residential parking program that does two things. Once they document that they are in that central business district area, and there's an image in the parking manual, there's a map that shows you that hatched area. So as long as you document that you live in that high volume parking area, you can purchase for $180 plus tax a residential parking pass, which lets you park on the street beyond 2 hours on the couple of blocks as noted on that map, further down Main and on Washington. And then it also includes an annual parking space lease in the Ann Street garage, which is at about half the price of what you would pay at $29 a month. It comes down to $15 a month. So we're hoping we can get some takers on that. We know in the urban area for apartment dwellers and stuff downtown, parking is its own challenge. And while we want the garage to be sustainable, we also want to encourage people to give it a try and try to make it as affordable as we can. And so with this whole thing, as I mentioned, it's all about outreach, education, letting people know what we're doing. We're not trying to sneak up so we can generate a bunch of revenue for parking tickets. That's not the point. And that's kind of been our goal through this whole thing. In the unfortunate event that we have to issue tickets, which I'm sure will happen for some folks, the procedure for dealing with that moving forward is that 3 tickets unpaid results in immobilization of the vehicle until the tickets are paid. You get a ticket and you pay it, you're all good. If you want to just keep getting tickets and paying them for them, you can do that. But for folks that are getting tickets and attempting to scofflaw the system and not even pay for the ticket when they just happen to have mistakenly overparked, they'll get immobilized with what's called a barnacle, and then that will not be released until those tickets are paid and a barnacle release fee is issued, which they can do right there on the street, on their phone, on the app, and it'll release and they can take it off and go on. So hopefully it's also much easier than when somebody finds themselves in the situation where they've got a ticket. It doesn't mean they have to come over, visit the police station, or come to City Hall. They should be able to pull up the app, get on Laz's website, and go ahead and just take care of it. Mention the appeals process. The ticket has a link, and the link gives you the option to pay your appeal, and then they'll go directly to Laz through that. So once again, the idea of having a third-party parking operator is so that they can be the ones directly handling that, which I think insulates you all a bit from when they have to deal with those folks and have those phone calls from somebody that might not be too happy that they just learned that we actually expect you to pay your tickets now. Happy to answer any questions, address anything else.
Commissioner?
I know it's kind of a lot of different moving parts.
Yes, my first question is that, what is barnacle?
You can Google it. It's a piece of equipment that rather than tow or use, what we all are used to seeing.
It's like a wheel lock?
It actually is a large thing that gets suctioned to the windshield of a vehicle.
Oh, okay.
Very powerful suction cups that you are not removing until they release it.
Okay. So I'm assuming that will be on the windshield where they can't drive.
Right.
So my follow-up question to that is, you're saying that if I come up and I have this barnacle on my windshield, I can pay with an app. What do I do with the barnacle?
So we talked about what a lot of communities will do is either you can have the parking operator come over and get it from you, or they'll put kind of little compartments in the streetscape where it might be at the end of the block, a compartment where you can fold it up and deposit it back in.
Follow-up question. So given that I'm not going to be too happy when I get a barnacle on my window, I don't think anyone is. What are the odds of someone actually putting the barnacle where it belongs and not throwing it to be in the road or throwing it in the trash or whatever? Like, what is there a trace on it on where the barnacle is, or? like a tracer on where we could get it if all of a sudden it's gone, or?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Oh, okay.
I don't know whether they're GPSed in some way, so if somebody takes off with it or goes and tosses it in a dumpster or something.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yes, Commissioner.
I was gonna have the same question. So I was sort of wondering, I mean, the hope is we're not using a ton of these, but
Right.
what do those cost? I mean, is that all rolled into what we're paying LAS currently, or is
Right,
that
they'll
gonna come-
procure the
okay.
barnacles, and the way those work is, LAS or us don't own them. It's essentially a service, so the company that makes the barnacles provides them to you, and then that barnacle release fee is how they recoup their costs.
Okay. And I had one other question. For residents that would get the $180 annual pass, they could park potentially on Washington and part of Maine. Now, say they've parked the vehicle there for too long, people are getting frustrated, it's run of their business. Is that just going to be a case-by-case basis at that point?
I mean, the way we've set up the parking pass program as drafted would be on those particular blocks of noted, they can park essentially unlimited. We're not gonna enforce the 2-hour limit on them. You know, part of the reason we put all this in this manual form rather than memorializing every detail of everything in the parking ordinance is because we know things are gonna change. You know, businesses are gonna open and close, buildings are gonna get rebuilt. And so our parking volume issues are likely to change. In fact, I think we all hope that continued reinvestment occurs and we generate a parking problem that we don't have today. At which point we will have to alter that program eventually, I would imagine, because that might become an issue. And so we've talked a lot about that with the parking advisory group too, that the whole idea is that this group, while they've met a bunch of times over the course of the last year because we've had all this stuff to set up, they'll probably meet much more infrequently after that. But their whole purpose is that if we're seeing that we're getting complaints or something needs to change, then we can schedule a meeting, call the group back up, hear about what they're hearing about. That's the other thing is it's a two-way street, so we want the members of that group to let us know if the experience isn't good and why and how we can do better.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Cockley, for explaining that. I know I sent a bunch of questions over earlier. I appreciate you assisting with answering some of those. Forgive me for rehashing a couple things because I wasn't a part of the presentation in September of 21. But total right now, when we received the Walker Consultants report in September of 21, it appeared from that the peak time of usage, which I can understand is Thursday afternoons because that's traffic court downtown, and of the 5,100 spots, there was about 911 total of those of all parking spaces used. So that's about 18% of all of the parking spaces used, and then of the on-street parking on Thursday afternoons, 672 total spots, and we used about 258 spots that were being used, so about 30%, 33%. And then the off-street parking on Thursday afternoons, there's 625 off-street parking spots, and 9% were being used at a maximum total. Correct?
I'd have to check the numbers from the report, but that all sounds accurate from memory.
So I'm just wondering, is enforcement of parking at an all-time high for us right now? Because it seems from looking at the numbers that even on our peak days that there's a lot of spaces that aren't being used even in the historic downtown area.
Sure. I mean, I think what we learned from the parking study is, does downtown, generally speaking, have a parking volume problem? And right now, the answer to that question is no. Now, can we manage better how users choose to use that parking? And I think that's what we're trying to start turning the ship on. And even when we met with Walker, we told them I expected to find that, right? But the hope is parcel B and C, Marcus Furniture Building, Broadway Building, 300 Washington, 245 West Main, Chad Peach's project, directly adjacent to the the Ann Street parking garage, all these things are gonna be coming into fruition. And I very much hope that picture changes because we've got so much activity. So this is a way to try to start thinking ahead, and so that we have a mechanism in place so that as those things change on the ground, we can deal with it.
But with those projects in place, the last update we got with surface parking and the parking structure that is being built, it's gonna be another 1,000 parking spots-ish? Is that close?
The transit center parking garage will be more like 301.
That's 301, and then there's
they'll be
surface.
on street, and I don't recall how many.
Okay. So I worry that we are focusing our resources and worrying about enforcement of these when there isn't a problem, and there may not be a problem in the future. There may be, but I'm worried about that. I think you all have done a great job in this plan.
Yeah.
I think it's a good plan. I just worry about the allocation of resources, and because I know your office is busy. I know you have limited number of,
Right.
time in the day. I just
Thankfully,
worry.
that's what we got LADs for,
Yeah.
so I don't have to, hopefully, once this is rolling, we're just checking in and monitoring, and certainly, we're not, and every conversation we've had with our operator too, is that the purpose of this is not to be punitive or to
Good.
play gotcha and go
That's where I was
run
going.
a bunch of tickets. I'm not gonna be meeting with them monthly saying, hey, why didn't you write more tickets? So,
Right.
I'm gonna pass it down to the city manager. You have a question?
No, I was just going to also offer that the one important reason for this program, and that maybe, parking's not being used all the time, but there's certain areas that are used too much and people aren't moving it. And to encourage economic development and people to come and visit the shops and leave and drive, that's why I think it's really, we thought it was very important to actually enforce the parking ordinance and to revise this, because it's important for our downtown businesses that people are coming and going and, respecting the 2-hour limit.
Commissioner Waters?
So I had a couple of residents call me, and I didn't really understand it through your report here, and maybe it's something different, but just for understanding, they had said that in, I guess, certain areas, that there would only be a 2-hour time limit for the whole entire day. So if I came and wanted to get coffee at the coffee tree, I could park there for 15 minutes and get my coffee, and then I have to keep that in mind. But then I want to go to B's and grab something for lunch, and I may be there 20 minutes.
Right.
Am I timed out in that period of 2 hours within my whole day? And I said, well, I didn't really get that from that, but I just wanted to know, maybe it was something I missed and I misread.
Right. So that 2 hours is 2 hours without moving in that parking space.
In that
So if you go
particular
get,
parking
get a cup
space.
of coffee, run around to B's, go park in front of the clerk's office to get tags. If all of that, you're circuitously going around downtown, or maybe you got a cup of coffee, ran somewhere else for a meeting, parked back down the street for some reason. We're not going to monitor each thing. Each
Okay.
time you're in a different place, the clock starts again whenever the parking operator comes by to verify that the car's there.
Okay. So basically, you just don't want cars to be stagnant. So if I was down, I met Kelly for lunch or something, and then it's like, hey, let's go over to Buffalo Trace, and I left my car there. That's what you're not wanting, is to leave that
Right.
car a longer
Well, we want you to
period
get
of
a cup
time.
of coffee and then let
Yeah.
you go on to Burger on Main and get something to eat. That's what we want you to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you all consider certain spaces to be shorter parking in terms of less than 2 hours? That
There are
more
some-
Like if I
frequency?
ran in and got coffee.
Out there, and I know there are some businesses that, I've had a discussion with Mr. Cole about it, and we've got some 30-minute spaces that are in front of the clerk's office there. So what we're trying to do now to make it consistent is take some of those random other spots that are that 15 to 30 minutes, that I think there's a few of them floating around, and try to make it consistent with 2 hours rather than have different limits here and there. And also because it gets to a point at which, if the parking operator's not gonna stand by the car for 15 minutes, you can put 15 minutes on the sign, but you may not.
Right.
You know what I mean? At some point, you would generate the need for even more personnel, which costs you more money because they'd have to so actively manage.
Yeah.
Whereas it's one thing to hit the block now and then come back 2 hours later. So the goal right now is to be consistent with 2 hour. Like I said, I know the clerk's office already has a few 30-minute, and my intention at the moment has not been to change those because I haven't had a conversation with him and I don't know the background of how that occurred.
Yes, Liz.
I will speak to that because I have had a resident reach out about this recently, and she said, you know, it would be helpful to have a loading zone. You know, that way you can unload groceries on Main and then drop your car off in the parking garage. So it's a similar situation.
It's tough, and we have a few of those around downtown. It just gets tough because every time you add a loading zone, you're getting rid of a parking spot, you know?
Right.
But could not the loading zone, like she's speaking of, be, what is it, on Broadway, there's a takeout. It's called a takeout space. And I know that was all for COVID, but it's still there. And I'm sure that it's needed, you know, with people coming and going. But is it used enough to where maybe it could be a takeout / loading zone for the residents to be able to pull in there, because it shouldn't take them more than 30 minutes or 30 minutes to get their groceries together and then move their car. Maybe that's something we can look into. And then I'll end with in front of the government building there on Broadway. It's almost right across from the Foundry area. You know, I've requested a few times to add on about 3 parking spaces there in front of that state building. Is there a federal regulation to why we can't put more parking spaces there? It is straight down the road, but we just have
Just none striped, or are they?
They're just not striped, and so like I know I've parked there, and then once I park there, people start parking in front of me. So I'm one that does, because I just don't know why they haven't been striped yet. I've asked for them to be striped as parking spaces because it only makes sense unless there is a security from the federal that maybe that's why we can't park in front of that building. But I want to assume that there's about 3 to 4 more parking spaces that could be striped in front of that, and I would like those to be added if possible.
I can certainly get with Public Works folks and figure out who we need to have a conversation with.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Any other?
Just real quick, Mr. Cockley, in one of the discussions that we were having, we had talked about impounding, and that it wasn't the preferred method or anything that anybody was looking towards impounding of any vehicles that, you know, had been in conflict with statutory requirements, I think is the way that it is said. And I was wondering, you know, it does, but the statute and our code does allow for the impounding, not just the barnacle or whatever they would call it. And I'm wondering if that is is that like the next step, if we've got the I'll use the Seinfeld, the white whale that, you know, they were, you know, when they were trying to catch.
The hope is that, no, absolutely not. The
Okay.
hope is that we create a culture of compliance, and
Okay.
every now and then somebody learns a lesson and gets barnacled, but other than that, you know, we're monitoring and,
Okay.
you know, giving a smattering of tickets out, and
I just wanted to make sure that there was a plan for that. If that was like a next step, if we were, you know, really bad actors or something
yeah,
of that nature.
the goal is to hopefully encourage people so we never get there.
Good discussion, everyone. Are we ready to move on to
Please.
Airbnb?
Short-term rental.
Short-term rental, sorry. Didn't mean to use a brand name.
Thank you, Eric, for staying around a little bit more and updating everyone on the work that you and your team are doing.
So short-term rentals. Generally speaking, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, we refer to them, are residential rentals for 29 days or less, where you generally aren't supplying food or, you know, daily housekeeping or other services associated with it. Sometimes in apartments, sometimes in houses. They've really kind of proliferated over the last 4 or 5 years. The city, I think right before I got here in August of 18, established our short-term rental registration requirements and the zoning requirements for those short-term rentals and where they could go and under what requirements. So currently, got to get a business license, tax requirements, an annual short-term registration with my office, and part of that is an annual housing inspection, similar to like any rental inspection we would do as part of our rental housing inspection. So we, much like a lot of communities, divide short-term rentals and regulate them differently depending on whether they're owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied. So owner-occupied is like you've got a basement in the apartment and you rent that out, or basement, yeah, an apartment in the basement, and maybe you rent that out sometimes, but you still live in the house. So you're on the property. It kind of self-regulates a little bit, because obviously if you're going to have, you know, a bunch of people rent a room in your house and they're going to behave poorly, you're going to stop that because you got to deal with it. So we're much looser in the districts that we allow the owner occupied to be in. They essentially are allowed in all of the residential districts and commercial districts, as well as downtown. The non-owner occupied, the current regulations don't allow in most of the single-family detached neighborhoods, but they are permitted in the commercial districts, the central business district, the special capital district, and then they are currently conditional in the special historic district. So the largest amount of the short-term rentals that we've seen come to town have largely been in downtown, central business district, special historic, and special capital. We've got some others elsewhere, but and that's one reason we started this conversation with the zoning update committee, is that the proliferation in those particular neighborhoods is a bit concerning. We can talk about that. Here's some data that was pulled in November in preparation for our first discussion on the zoning update committee, and you can see the top there is December 21, and there's 15 properties noted on VRBO and Airbnb, and now we're up to 81 over the last few years. So that's kind of the data behind what we're seeing. As I said, that previous had 81 between the two, but just Airbnb, as of November 17th, there were 67 citywide, 22 of which were in South Frankfort and 16 were in the Central Business District or Special Historic. So you can see that concentration is particularly downtown. Now some of that is Central Business District, but you know, the Special Historic neighborhood, there's a limit to that amount of housing and the degree to which this can kind of change the feel of the neighborhood. So I'm sure we've all stayed in Airbnbs and appreciate their benefits for economic development, for generating revenue, as long as you get people to file the things they're supposed to file. And marginally, we've seen in some cases an indirect benefit being that if you're going to rent out an owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied short-term rental, obviously you're going to want it to be in good shape. So it encourages landowners to keep up with property maintenance. So that's kind of an indirect benefit. The concern, as I mentioned, is always just they're challenging, like several things that we deal with, to regulate, to chase down all the folks on the different platforms, get them to get the business license and then to file all their subsequent tax filings is a challenge. As is our registration program, to annually have to chase down everyone again, do an inspection, send notification, all that. It's just time consuming for staff. And as I mentioned, the non-owner occupied STRs proliferating in our historic districts. Not so concerned about it in the central business district, obviously. We love having residential units and or hotels and things of that nature in central business district. But the volume that we're seeing in special capital and special historic is a bit concerning in terms of losing affordable housing stock and also just changing, you know, the character of the neighborhood if you get too many in one area. So, you know, my example is I've just experienced this last 6 months or so. We had one approved on my street, and as most of you all know, I'm down on Watson Court, and there's like 10 houses. We have one non-owner occupied Airbnb on the street, which has not been a problem, but you can imagine if suddenly that street had 4 of them, then you might generate traffic issues, trash issues, noise, and certainly change the character of some of these tight-knit historic neighborhoods we have. So, as I mentioned, the Zoning Update Committee, which is that subcommittee of the Planning Commission that needs to go over proposed zoning changes, zoning ordinance changes, I should say, not zoning map amendments, met on the 17th, and we just kind of discussed the concerns and shared some ideas, and we are planning to come back with some proposal later this month and see what their take is on it. That'll then go to the Planning Commission and then ultimately come back to you all for review and approval or any changes you want to make at that time. So just to talk a little bit about some of the choices, the way cities are dealing with this. Louisville is an example. They have a minimum distance between them so they can't cluster. Other cities have used density capped of a percentage of the dwelling units in a particular neighborhood or zoning district can be non-owner occupied short-term rentals as a way to limit it. And then Chattanooga is a bit more stringent. They actually have just an STR district, and that's the only place they allow them. And then that's kind of an interesting way to handle it. Non-owner occupied required to mail adjoining property owner notices within 300 feet, and if they get more than 4 written objections, then they'll have a board review that particular one. That's a strange way to handle it, but I would not recommend that particular one. And then Nelson County, also 400 foot buffer between no owner occupied. So that's kind of the venue. We have begun drafting something. I didn't bring that to share with you all now because we haven't shared that with the Zoning Update Committee or the Planning Commission, so I didn't want to get us out of kilter, but more than happy to kind of chat about the different options, what you guys are hearing, your concerns, and certainly, you know, anybody's welcome to come to that update committee meeting as well. We generally get around the table and give everybody copies and go over it. So fairly informal procedure. Anybody's invited.
Lisa? I'm sorry, Commissioner Hager. Sorry, thank you. Work session.
So, I mean, this is something I'm hearing about a whole lot, and I'm sure everyone else is sitting up here. And like you've said, we're not the only community dealing with it. So I know that Covington has recently done a moratorium on this. So they're taking 6 months to review policies and I guess figure out how they want to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking, is that the step we need to take? Because like you said, we're running into character issues with neighborhoods, lack of housing, lack of affordable housing. And, you know, I'm just getting a lot of complaints from people that are renting downtown and they're saying, you know, I feel like my rent's gonna go up or it is going up and I don't wanna deal with people in town partying. So it feels like this might be that period of time where we do need to sit back and reflect. So I really appreciate the Zoning Update Committee discussing this and you moving forward, but I would like to hear what everyone else has to say up here too. Thank you.
I think there's a, sorry, I apologize.
Go ahead, Commissioner Thompson.
I think it's a fine line that we have to balance with regard to the right of an owner to purchase a home and the right of alienation, whether how they use that home, sell that home, rent that home. Obviously, you know, I understand that other locations have put moratoriums on the area, and you know, places like Newport and things, places of that nature. But we're also in a weird position that we want more people to come down here, and we find that folks who are our age tend to enjoy, you know, having a home or a house that we're, you know, renting as opposed to a hotel room. And so I think that's a fine line that we have to balance. The other thing that I had asked earlier in one of our conversations was about the 30-day rule and how that is affected. I know that the statute specifically says that you must limit it to 30 days to a person, and it specifically says and italicizes that they added the word to a person. So I think my question is, if a brokering agency has leased for the whole year, say the stone building next to the Bourbon on Main, is that to a person? Does that count as a or can we charge them as a
Essentially, the 29-day limit, I wouldn't think about that in terms of a limit of what people can rent to, but that's the limit of who I treat as a short-term rental. So if you're a legislator and you want to rent a house for 90 days or something, to me, and that homeowner calls down here and says, hey, I got this house, Eric, I'm going to rent it to this legislator for 90 days, or I need to get short-term rental registration, the answer is no. You're just renting a house at that point that happens to have a 90-day lease. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're getting close, I think the 29 days came from someone having to decide, and to your question, where's the limit between what is a short-term rental and what is just a relatively short lease
Right.
on a house, right?
Right.
Which is, we don't regulate.
Right.
Um,
I worry that people will make all of their leases, 31 days, and you just pay me for the first 7. I mean, not that people would try to skirt the system. I'm just thinking.
would never do that.
And that's one of the challenges with this thing
Yeah.
is trying to get everybody, and it's definitely one of those industries that some people are gonna
Yeah.
do what they can, and we just,
So did you all discuss any of these options at the zoning update committee in November, or you're going to take it up on February 21st?
we talked about some examples. We didn't come out of that with a particular proposal on what that language is gonna come back to them. But we referenced these things, and the general concern from the room was for the same things that we've all talked about. So we have language drafted to take back to them.
And on the 21st, do you think you'll come out of there with recommendations?
I hope so.
And did a moratorium, was that part of the discussion?
Briefly, the moratorium idea came up. I think if that was gonna be the option, that would be more appropriate for this body, in my opinion, to consider. From a time frame perspective, if we can get to zoning update committee on the 21st and have it ready to come out of committee, that'll probably put us at planning commission in April, because it'll likely be too late to advertise it for March for planning commission, which brings it back to here May. So you could have whatever new restrictions theoretically June. So I think it's a comfort level. On one hand, I'm thinking we're already moving on the process. We can get this here and deal with it. We're trying to get ahead of it, but it seems like we have a request, a lot of months, either at the ARB for the Special Historic District or the permitted use. I get calls every week from a few people that ask about properties in South Frankfort and putting Airbnb, non-owner occupied Airbnbs in these, so.
Commissioner Unger, got a question?
I know you showed us some numbers. So for with the current ordinance, is there like a percentage that there can be the amount?
So
Or-
right now, in terms of a volume, the ordinance is silent. And so that's essentially what we're adding is language to
Okay.
talk about how we're have a concern about concentration of these things, and that's one of the things when you have to get a conditional use for those that the board should consider. And then we're also gonna build in, similar to some of these examples, some kind of little bit more absolute calculatable objective limit. Because I fear that we're putting the ARB in a tough spot if all you say is, well, just don't let there be too many. Well, what's too many? And every time you get one coming in that appears to meet the requirements, yes, it's a conditional use, you gotta go to the board, but that might be asking a lot of them to say no to a bunch of them subjectively, you know what I mean? So we're trying to build in something objective to limit the concentration and volume.
Yes, Commissioner Waters?
I appreciate the Airbnbs, but looking at the numbers, it bothers me because there's more people that want to be homeowners in Frankfort, and it brings people who will be here 24/7 and not people that will be here just a few days. And so I'm hoping maybe the less need for Airbnbs will decrease as we have some of these boutiques that may be opening soon in hopes, as far as maybe people becoming more homeowners in Frankfort. But what I want to share is that when we look at rentals and you're saying 30 days on that, is this also, would this, even though they're not listed as on the Airbnbs, are they still considered part of these numbers, such as the recovery homes? Like recovery homes that people are renting out in the community that are non-clinical recovery homes that are just popping up and there's 3 or 4 people living in the home and they're calling them recovery homes? Are these also listed with these? I mean, I know they're not Airbnbs, but that would be a short term for recovery.
Examples of those that have come to my knowledge recently The folks are longer-term residents. They're not staying for 30, 45 days. What I've been
Okay.
told by the owners is that they're essentially renting the place. They call it a sober home or a whatever. But as you said, there's no clinical thing happening. This is a homeowner
Right.
that's just choosing to rent to these folks that happen to be in recovery is what I
So
understand.
because maybe they stay 6 months or whatever, they wouldn't be part of this, because there's House Bill 248 is coming in regards to the recovery of, trying to dismantle the non-clinical recovery homes. And I was just wondering what that looks like as far as that's concerned, for that to continue running in our community.
Yeah, this would not address any need to further regulate those.
Mhm.
My understanding is, at least from a legal standpoint, until something else changed in statute, that as long as there's no treatment occurring at those places, I mean, I treat them like any other residential rental.
Roommates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I guess we can move on.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rebecca Hall, our grants manager, to talk about a recommendation for applying for the Transportation Alternatives Program grant.
Yes, I just wanted to give you guys an update. You will see on the voting meeting on the 27th that we will have a recommendation for a application for Transportation Alternatives Program. As you know, we've finished out the Thoroughbred Trail, and we're working towards closing out the wayfinding signage, which both of those were funded by TAP. We met with Walk Bike Frankfort last Thursday and talked about some options, what's ready to go up for application, and what they would like to apply for, and we agreed to was to start with the first couple of steps on the 5-mile loop that they want to go around Frankfort. It would start at High Street, go by the trail, the Thoroughbred Trail, and go out on the bottom portion of the old Pensley Trail and connect the Home Street area to both the Thoroughbred Trail, which they would end up on East Main, and then also to downtown. So if that's okay with you, we'll move forward on that, but then you'll be able to vote on that on the 27th.
Questions?
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
We'll take it up. Moving on to discussion items.
We'd like to welcome Elle Travis, our neighbor and executive director of Yes Arts, for an update since responding to the BOC, who had a request to hear from all the folks who have received subsidies from the city. And Elle, just a quick reminder that we have 5 minutes, and then but that doesn't include Q&A, and we'll do a reminder for you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for having me here tonight. I am Elle Travis, as they said, the executive director with Yes Arts, and so we are just checking in on what we've done in the last year since we've moved in. I will just give a brief background that Yes Arts formed in 2016 following the overdose death of our founding artist's daughter, Maya. And that is Doris Thurber, and she reached out and created, in partnership with Joanna Hay and Jennifer Zing, a drug court program to work with women in early recovery through arts programming. And so that's kind of our background. Our mission is mobilizing the power of community and the arts to disrupt the cycle of addiction. And so a lot of things have happened between 2016 and now, but we're going to fast forward a little bit and just talk about this past year. So in July 2021 is when I started as executive director, and we, of course, took over started leasing the facility that was formerly the Frankfort Plant Board. The top row is going to be our befores, and the bottom rows are our afters on these next couple of slides. And so the city, thank you all for putting a lot of work into that building before we moved in, and then with about 283 volunteers from January to April, we painted, cleaned, pulled out, put in all kinds of things. And so we have created an art center. These are just a couple of our photos. We, of course, had, within those 283 volunteers, we had K-State football team, beta clubs, individuals, Moms Demand Action, all kinds of groups that came down. It was really a wonderful community-wide project. And Lisa, yay, thanks Commissioner Unger, contributing to that. In April, on April 22nd, we had our first look event, which was the opening of our facility as a whole, but also our first exhibit in our gallery. We featured the work of Doris Thurber and Dawn Blue, as well as some work in our side gallery from the Stewart Home School. All right, so who do we serve? That's a constant question that I hear because people hear about Just Say Yes, and there's a lot of yeses in all this, and people get confused, and we are doing different stuff now than we were in the past. Same but different. So the very first thing that I'll talk about is recovery. So we do offer services similar to the drug court program. We're carrying that forward and just morphing it a little bit. We offer primary prevention for youth, as well as a whole lot of community-based programs. So we'll talk first about our recovery program, which is now going to be referred to as ART. It's Achieving Recovery Together. That will be the drug court partnership, and we also have just received a grant, Department of Justice micro grant in partnership with the City of Frankfort, Frankfort Police Department, and so we'll be working through that program. And all of our recovery services, which started as that little seed of an idea from these artists in Frankfort, and eventually over the pandemic shifted to virtual sessions that were led by myself, and I've 9 years, so I'm in long-term recovery. So it shifted from being arts-based. I'm still an artist, but it shifted to a more lived experience model, and now we're shifting again, and it will be an actual therapeutic program. So those programs will be led in partnership from an art therapist and a peer support. The art programs will also be facilitated. We're working on partnerships with the Franklin County Women and Family Shelters Recovery Housing Program, as well as the Sunshine Center has written a grant for us to work with their domestic violence victims group. And there's a lot of overlap, as I'm sure you all can appreciate, in trauma in general. Substance use doesn't just hold its own. It overlaps with homelessness, food access, abuse, and so many other topics. So that is what we're doing with our recovery program. The next program we'll talk about is our youth program, which we love to call YAY because it's exciting, which is Yes Arts Youth. Those programs, as we move forward, are serving all ages. We have not yet rolled out our little bitties, the toddlers, but to date we have served preschool, kindergarten age through high school. And so in the very near future, we'll have all ages of youth. That is facilitated by Yes Arts team. So that model is primary prevention, which looks totally different than secondary and tertiary. When you're starting to see youth who are actually having problems with substances, this is to deter children from having those problems. So it really just looks like awesome art classes. But all of the people who work on those teams are background checked and trained on topics such as trauma-informed care, implicit bias, ACEs and protective factors, conscious discipline, neurodiversity, and mental health first aid, as well as queer youth and teen suicide and other relevant topics. We are currently rolling out programs that are available to all children, but we also have some very identified partner programs such as Wanda Joyce Robinson Foundation, the Franklin County Academy, as well as gifted and talented programs across the elementary schools.
And that's time.
Thank you. That was fast. The last one I will talk about, since I have like 30 seconds, is community.
We'll
Yep.
let us ask
Okay,
some
sure.
questions here.
Any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Travis?
Do you mind, sorry,
Go ahead.
do you mind talking a little bit about what your organization does when it comes to the community?
Yes. Thank you so much, Commissioner. We have a Black Women Artists of Frankfort network that is grant funded through the Kentucky Foundation for Women, and that is a network of about a dozen women artists. And through that program, we're partnering with the Franklin County Women and Family Shelter. Lucy Azabuke is one of our women artists, and she has written through our encouragement, her own grant through the Kentucky Foundation for Women and Art Meets Activism grant, and so she'll bring her participants in her program over to actually hold a gallery exhibit in our gallery in June. As well as we have a gallery. We have an art gallery in our facility, and so that's going to rotate quarterly professional exhibits, so that's a whole community program. We have gallery openings and things like that. And then we have outreach events, so I'm sure you all have seen us with all the kids' baby pools and all kinds of fun stuff at all the different community events. And we've recently launched our adult arts education program, which is just anybody who loves to come make art that is not a youth can come to those programs as well. And then we're a part of a community partnership and planning group that has formed out of ASAP, our Agency for Substance Abuse Prevention. And we have started kind of a strategic planning for our community to become a recovery care community. So I'm part of that as well.
Can you talk about how many youths you actually served last year? Do you
Yes.
document that?
In direct programs, it was right around 500 youth. We programmed in the summer after following our opening of our building, and then we took a break in the fall for some strategic planning, and so we're just revving that back up. If you count all of the children that we reached through outreach programs, which was not coming to a class but participating in activities, it was near about 4,000.
Good work. Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Travis.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Oh, I'm just going to do one thing. If anybody has any questions or thoughts, or if you all would like to come visit, I know some of the commissioners have come by. I appreciate that and would love to invite you all down anytime.
We're going to see you on March.
Oh, yeah. We have a win happening.
Yes.
So we're excited to partner on that. Thank you.
We'll
So
see you then. Next up, want to welcome Tammy Wilson, who is the Executive Director of Casa de Bluegrass, for an update on their work. Thank you, Tammy, for driving over.
Thank you all. Yes, I'm not from Frankfort, but I feel like that I do know a lot of you all, mainly because I Facebook stalk you and add you as I makes the community feel smaller to me. So this past year for Casa de Bluegrass, it's been a little bit of a bumpy road. I'm not going to lie. Our numbers have been down as far as, but that's a good thing. And a bad thing. Our numbers have been down as far as the children that we're serving and as far as the volunteers that we have currently. And that is a couple of reasons. That's twofold. We've lost some staff that had their family members as volunteers and their friends. And so that's kind of a bad, scenario situation to have when you have a nonprofit going because of situations just like this. But also because of the fact that the numbers are down for child abuse and neglect in the state of Kentucky. We went from being number 3 to number 5, so that should be great. However, what we are seeing, and I'm just going to be honest, is that the cases that we are advocating for in the family court system have become just tremendously unspeakable. The acts that we're seeing, they're rising to levels that are just heart-wrenching, and it's rising to levels of human trafficking. And so the volunteer advocates that we have been doing amazing at picking up those cases and making sure that those children are advocated for. Over this past year, there was 158 petitions filed on behalf of abused and neglected children in Franklin County. And it is our goal to eventually have a volunteer advocate for all of those children that come through the court system. Currently, we have 24 volunteers serving, and they served 52 children in Franklin County for 2022. The hours of those volunteers put in on a case was 780, and the total visits they made with those children was 568. The advocating that they did on behalf of those children had to do with their physical health, their mental health, their educational advocacy, as well as permanency. Out of those 52 children that we served, 23 of those cases closed, and those children found permanency with a safe home. Casa de Bluegrass staff has also been working diligently to make a presence in Franklin County, known through various fundraisers and community outreach programs. We had a very successful Taste of the Trace event, as well as a Build-A-Bear campaign that we did where we had community members to adopt a bear that would go to one of the children that we served because we got a huge donation from the Build-A-Bear Foundation. And we were doing this for various reasons. We know that because, like everyone else in the nonprofit organizations, we received the letters from the city of Frankfort saying that the funding would be decreasing. So we are trying to broaden our funding portfolio. We're trying to get more individual donors, just have more access to bigger fundraisers. But then also with that, we feel like that it's going to broaden the mission of CASA and broaden the of getting volunteers, because we are in need of volunteers for our community. We're in need of volunteer advocates, and we're in need of volunteers for our board of directors. So again, I thank you all. See, I talk pretty fast, so my 5 minutes kind of goes quickly.
Thank you, Tammy.
Any questions? If not, I do have to say that the parking guy, that was pretty amazing, because my first New Year's resolution was to get all the way around, to do the parallel parking on the first try and not drive around the blocks crying. And so I won a coffee cup from Lee and Haley TV show. So there you go. But do you all have any questions for me?
Any questions? Yes, Commissioner May.
If someone was interested in volunteering, what would be, are there requirements?
Yes, so you had to be 21 years of age, you had to pass a background check, and there is a sex offender, the child abuse awareness, the FBI, and the state and local ALC one, as well as adult abuse one. You had to take 30 hours of training, and we offer that at our Frankfort office and at our Boyle County office. So that's the great thing that I'm doing right now is I'm running, both offices. So we have that at Frankfort right now, and we just finished up one where we had some great new volunteers coming out of that, and we're currently in the middle of one right now. We're on week 4, so that's an 8-week session, and then they have to do a court observation in front of the family court judge. So, yes.
And when is your major fundraiser and what is it?
The major one for here, so that's the fun thing is where my county stretch from, Franklin to down to Boyle, the majority of CASA programs, they have one big fundraiser. But for us, we have 2. We have the Derby Gala in Danville, which we used to have that here, but now for Franklin, we kind of have the Taste of the Trace. And we partner with Buffalo Trace. And this past year, we were chosen to receive the Flight of Weller. And so that fundraiser itself brought in $35,000.
And when is that?
The Taste of the Trace it's in the fall, so it's going to be September to October, where I haven't gotten in touch with Sarah just yet to nail that date down. Because I'm in the middle of doing the Derby Gala. Then will be April 15th if anybody wants to come to that one in Danville.
And anything else? We do appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry I talk so fast, but I do have
Great.
these. I do have these. It's everything that I basically just said, if you all want to.
Thank you very
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
again.
Tim.
Thank you very much.
Next, we'd like to welcome Dr. Keith McCutcheon here to present the results of the first International Jazz Day Festival we had here in Frankfort and his plans for this year. I know you've been meeting with Blair and Rebecca and getting ready so we can celebrate in April.
Thank you. Can I change these or do you have it? It's here. Okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you. K-Jams does stand for Kentucky Jazz Appreciation Month. The K-Jam Collective comes out of about 4 years of bringing jazz to Frankfort via K-State and then downtown. Played for years in Lexington, going back to 1982 before I moved away and back. And so the idea is that eventually the impact will be in Frankfort, Lexington, and Louisville. And I'm going to share the budget. Well, I'll share. This is a letter I wrote in support of the grant that the city got for the NEA. Just really speaking of my advocacy in a number of places with that, last year's budget was created through a combination of private and corporate sponsors, a $6,000 grant from LexArts, and fiscally, we are under LexArts still at this point. This year will make the second of 3 years of grants. After 2 years, they're going to increase the amount of grants for us. Let's see, excuse me. The Lexington Public Library created a series of 4 concerts of different branches throughout the city. And the budget for their performance and programming came directly from the library. So it's another thing that I've been doing is partnering with organizations and convincing them to just use their own programming to be a part of what we're doing and sharing those events with the community. And let's see here. Budget paid for the musicians, cost of the Grand Theater, piano rental, graphic design and media, and the professional video and audio recording, editing and production. And I'll share more about that. That's one of the biggest things that came out of this was creating a ready produced production that we were able to present to KET, and it's been airing throughout the month of January, and there's more dates coming up in February. I have a link at the end and share with you, and also you have access to the full-length concert. This year we're looking at honoring a tribute to our living legends, Frankfort's own special living legends, if you will, and then special guest NEA Jazz Ambassador Jamie Abersold. Kimber Colefield has recorded several jazz albums when she lived down in Atlanta with some number of just really wonderful musicians. She's back here now, and of course, it's been a lot of her time taking care of her parents, but she did some really wonderful things what people should know about and made some wonderful albums. Tom Simph, again from Frankfort, was with Stan Kenton Orchestra. He's probably the senior veteran on there, and but has been a wonderful teacher and mentor. I even had him when I was at UK back in the 80s, and it's going to be wonderful to play with him now. Ricky Cook, Robert Griffin, and Hunt Butler. Oh no, I left Hunt Butler off of there. They were, the three of them went to high school here, and of course Hunt played with Frank Sinatra and a number of people. Taught at K-State as well as Robert Griffin. Robert Griffin gets honored just for having taught here in the city so many years, and his teaching and being the impetus of so many of these students that have gone on. Tyrone Wheeler, Jonathan Higgins are two people that play with Jamie Abersold. Jamie Abersold creates internationally some of a major body of the jazz educational products that people use around the world, as I say. And
1 minute.
thank you. In addition, now in expanding out, we are forming a block party, a museum hop between the two museums downtown. There's going to be an hour-long concert inside the Kentucky Historical Museum, History Museum. And then, of course, looking to look at all the displays that are going to be in the CC Museum, and we'll have musicians in each place. Then outside, there's going to be food trucks, live bands, a DJ, and the KSU Day of Jazz will happen the morning of the event at the Grand. Bringing the students there, educational component, and they'll work with the people that will be performing later.
That's time.
Okay, thank you. And just very quickly though, Paul Sawyer has really gone all out. They've matched what was going on in Lexington. They're going to do a full-fledged concert all day long with programming all day long, culminating with an event with Frank X. Walker and quartet together. And that's the speculated expenses. And I am asking you all, again, to join us in the budget with a contribution of $2,500 to match some of the costs that we have. And work, again, to go with the in-kind contributions, and looking at how we continue to make this more of a touristic entity where really we can brand it in a way that it really can impact people coming in for the Bourbon Trail and other tourist possibilities. So thank you.
Let's ask some questions here. Does
Sure.
anybody want to comment or question? Okay. What about the museum, the hop that you had on there? What day is that?
That's going to be
Is it
April
Thursday?
20. That's Friday, April 21st.
Okay, so it's the night before the.
And then the
Paul
next day
Sawyer.
is the Paul Sawyer.
Okay.
Right? Yes, so we've got a weekend going there.
Okay.
I guess that's where I'll be for my birthday.
Oh, yeah, good.
Last year was fantastic, but I think universally everyone said that I talked to said it was a wonderful concert and event. So we expect more of that this year, of course.
Well, we're looking to connect the dots as much as we can. I was so glad to meet you. There's another whole component about education and literacy, trying to deal with gun violence. So we want to tie in with as many agencies as we can in that respect. And also, I did leave out the Sunday, April 30th, is actually International Jazz Day. this time, and we're going to working with Limewater on having a jazz brunch there. And since it's Sunday, possibly looking at doing a gospel concert that afternoon somewhere outside, perhaps in the parking lot, First Baptist or something. So,
Thank you.
yeah. But thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Yes.
I would like, I know that he's requesting the 2,500. I don't think that that's in, but we are having budget talks, so I would like that to be part of that talk and how we can continue to support financially as well as in kind. So I'd like staff to put that on a list of things when we're discussing budget, please.
Yes.
And thank you for that. And in that too, ideas how we incentivize, right? How we really make it where it's a to partner, so everyone's creating more money and revenue and tourism. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McCutcheon. Yes, I'll follow up. Last discussion item, I'd like to welcome Joanna Hay and Courtney Fallis to present their work on creating the Martin Luther King Freedom March on Frankfort. And again, just a quick reminder, 5 minutes will give you a notice. And I'm sorry, I didn't have your name, madam, who is also with you.
Dr. Leidata Denise Grimes.
Okay, nice to meet you. Sorry, I didn't have your name.
So we have 5 minutes, not 10? Okay, well, we will streamline
But
it.
there's plenty of time for questions and answers.
Okay, all right. Yes, my name is Joanna Hay, and it's been an honor to work with Leidata Grimes, Dr. Grimes, since 2021. But I wanted to start this presentation out by thanking the City of Frankfort and the City Commissioners for initiating this important project about the 1964 March on Frankfort by applying to the National Park Service for a Preserving African American Civil Rights History grant. And it's been an honor to have contracted to do this work and create these resources about Frankfort on a national scale. Our goal for this project, when we began, was that every Kentucky school child would know that in 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King and Jackie Robinson marched on Frankfort with 10,000 marchers. And hopefully every Kentucky citizen would know that this March on Frankfort happened and that it's significant aftermath of the 1966 Kentucky Civil Rights legislation passing and being the most comprehensive civil rights legislation in a southern states up to that point. So I wanted to point out on this website, if you can scroll down a little bit, Courtney, the main deliverables that we created from this project. We did 10 new interviews with people who attended the march. We created lesson plans for educators and students on PBS Learning Media. We created 4 new mini documentaries that are taught, that educators can use with lesson plans. And Courtney, our IT person back there who created this website for the project, created a virtual tour up Capitol Avenue. So those were the main deliverables that I wanted to tell you about, that are resources that can be used. And of course, this website is the gateway into all of those resources. I want to speak briefly about the importance of this program and thank you all again for supporting this work. The importance of oral histories is that it allows us to add voices to the historical records. It's an egalitarian work. Most of us will not leave important papers, diaries, notes, meeting records, such that people can look back and figure out who we are, what we thought, what was important to us. But when we sit down with people and we conduct oral histories, we get a chance to add everyone to the historical record. And in that way, we get to complicate the historical record, and we get to place people in interaction and engagement with one another. And so a lot of the people that we got to talk to came from all different walks of life. Many of them had ties to Frankfort. So Sharon Mitchell, who grew up in the shadows of Kentucky State University, she's an archivist at Berea College, but at the time she was a 14-year-old student who chose to participate in this march.
You meet people like Dr. Louis Newby, who was the pastor of First Corinthian right here in Frankfort, Kentucky. You meet men like Joe Smith, who was over the Office of Economic Opportunity, and he was a parade marshal that day. You get to meet people like Dr. Carl Smith, who was the choir director at Kentucky State University, who is now 90 years old and able to share with us the experience of being on those Capitol steps with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and having had an actual conversation with him. You know, and so you get to meet people like Sheila Mason Burton, who's also a Frankfort resident and works right here in the LRC. But beyond that, you get to understand why these people were there, what it meant to them, and their role, their everyday role as activists. A lot of times when we think of great movements, we think of great men like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But this was actually a work of local people who understood their responsibility to make this a more equal and a more just Commonwealth. And so with these oral histories, we celebrate that. Why is this important to Frankfort and Kentucky history? So many times when we talk about Kentucky, we think of those stereotypes that have come to define us that are not always good. This was a moment in which Kentucky led the nation with the accommodations bill that was passed. This was an opportunity to demonstrate that Kentucky was a place that was thinking, living, breathing, and moving us toward the society that we want to be and that we claim to be.
1 minute.
Thank you, Idata. Also, I want to add, it's not fair to ask a historian to speak. Do you
want to pull up that education page? I want to just show you the image of the Kentucky's Black History and Culture is a collection of lesson plans that Lee Data and I worked on together, not only about the March on Frankfort, but from the transatlantic slave trade up through the Civil War. Click now on the that second clip I gave you of the 5th grade lesson plans on PBS Learning Media. Just to show you the extent, well, you all can click out of that. PBS Learning Media has hosted these films, and we have complete lesson plans associated with it. I did want to make sure we played the clip from the march in our time. Let's just roll this.
Full steam ahead, we're going.
Principal at our school, when he got wind that we were going to skip school to go to that march, anyone who went would be suspended. My parents, I can't say that they told me definitely not to go, but my parents, my mother, did not want me to miss school.
So how did you go?
Oh, I just walked. It really was a short walk. It was just a block. I just had to walk 1 block to get to the march. And Frankfort has a school that had open lunch. And there was no cafeteria. You had to leave school anyway. And we would leave school and walk home and be back. We had an hour lunch. We'd walk home and be back to school before the bell rang. So instead of going home, I went to the march.
My brother, who owns a funeral home, I was able to get him to bring his limousine.
So my sister came to me and asked me if I thought I could acquire our limo and go to the airport and pick up Dr. Martin Luther King and Jackie Robinson and take them to Frankfort for a march they're gonna have.
Now, Jackie Robinson got in the front seat with my brother who was driving. Jackie's up in the front talking to my brother. Dr. King and I sitting in the back, and I'm trying to brief him on what the situation is with the public accommodations law. He said, and that's all I remember him saying. I was just talking, telling him what was going on, who was for it, who was against it, where the governor stood.
10,000 people came to march on Frankfort, the capital of Kentucky, in order to influence lawmakers to enact a civil rights bill to protect the freedoms of all Kentuckians.
It may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me, and I think that's pretty spot on.
So after the march, some of the reporters told me that...
That's a little taste of one of the 4 films that we created from these oral histories. They're on the PBS Learning Media platform for 5th graders, 8th graders, and high schoolers, and a section on music featuring Carl Smith and the KSU choir story. And we're really pleased that we were able to do this project. A couple of it, I think our time is up, but
Keep
Tell me
going.
about is this website live for us?
it is
to go?
live. It's MLKMarchonFrankfurt.com. Thanks, Courtney. And all of these resources can be found from that homepage.
And is there a walking tour, or is there something?
Do you want to show the virtual walking tour that you did?
This is the story map.
It's called a story map.
Follow along on the placement of the map of where they were taken.
And we can identify the place on the map to the pictures exactly. The buildings are still there, the houses are still there. So this is a field trip resource for all those kids that come in the school buses, and you can move right up Capitol Avenue with the images. And this picture number 5, that is Dr. Smith's KSU choir, Kentucky State College at the time. They're on the program that is in the Capital City Museum on the wall. And you can see many of these singers in some of the other images that are in this collection that are used throughout the films.
So one of the things,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, one of the things I was going to say is that we've broken up the lesson plans. We have lesson plans for elementary, middle school, as well as high school. We broke those up into categories. So we talked about Frankfort as the place and what it represented, the seat of power, the work that you all do. We also talked about the women who were involved in the movement. And we also wanted to focus on the role of youth in the movement, in these lesson plans. And so you'll see all of that there, as well as the films that accompany it.
What's next?
Well, we have some events coming up. FOR, in partnership with FOR, our Frankfurt organization, Focus on Race Relations. They are planning an event on March the 5th here in Frankfurt at the Paul Sawyer Public Library. March the 5th, 2023 is the 59th anniversary of the March on Frankfurt. That means next year will be an even bigger year. So we have the Frankfurt event. Lexington Lex History has invited Lee Data and myself to present, and Lee Data is also coming for the March 5th event here in Frankfurt. And we're going to present Lex History at a Lex Talk at the Thomas Hunt Morgan House in Lexington. So those are open to the public. There's our lesson plan writer extraordinaire, Judy Sizemore. So the 3 of us were the team that brought this project to fruition. And then we've got, Lee Data and I are both members of the National Oral History Association. I have applied and won awards from the Oral History Association before, and I think this is really a contender for both national awards, as well as we would like to present at the Oral History Association conference in October. You've probably got in your packets, we did make a request for some promotional funds so that Lee Data and I can get the word out about this project, do presentations like this, do history organization presentations, and hopefully inspire people to use these resources.
Yes, City Manager.
Thank you all so much. I wanted to ask, what's the role of the Lex History? Have they been supportive, or I didn't know that, or they're just an organization that's focused on
Mandy,
this?
the new executive director, reached out to me. She used to be here at the KHS at the History Center, and she knew about this project, and she reached out to me just a month ago, and we started the conversation. So it was serendipitous. Yeah, and then working with Ellie at the Capital City Museum, that's another wonderful partnership. So many of these resources came through the museum, and they've been a huge support, and we look forward to doing more there. And we did an appearance on television at the History Museum recently. Fox 59 came and interviewed us.
Commissioner Waters?
I just want to say, Dr. Grimes and Joanna, it's fabulous. I know I came by your office a few weeks ago and you were giving me sort of an overview, and I was just so excited then, and just like, I can't wait till you do the whole presentation. But I'm excited because you've added the community, you've added the education principles that we need in our school, because our school does not really teach Black history. I took my kids out a couple of weeks ago just to go to Black history event at the Capitol, because they don't really obtain that, and we're having a lot of race issues inside our school systems, whether that's public or independent, and my kid is always involved in that, and it is hurtful. And one thing that I've told the principal is that you have to teach more of this history for people to understand it, and for the people that are not affected by this history, it has become funny for the children. And so, my kid should not have to laugh at something that's hurtful to him just to feel like he has to fit in because the teachers and the principals are unable to do things. So I'm hoping some of these will hit inside our school system so that all of our children can feel safe and appreciated at school, no matter what shade they are or what disability they have, because it's running rapid in our school systems. So I appreciate this. It hits home. I'm excited to learn more about Frankfort's history that I'm not aware of, and seeing these living legends that are still alive and well, to have these, like Carl Smith. I mean, I love that man. You know, I mean, he's still going, you know, and at 90 years old, to have all of that knowledge and still be able to share it. And I'm so glad that you guys were able to attain that, and we're able to retain that for generations to come, because it is priceless. So thank you for using your talents, your knowledge to be able to do this for Frankfort. It's something I think that we've wanted to do for a while. And thank you for the IT on that, because everything right now is IT. It's all social media. It looks great. It seems so easy to navigate. So thank you so much for that. And I look forward to so many other things to come. So thank you both. And I appreciate the pin that you gave me when I came there.
I got pins for everybody.
Commissioner Johnson, do you have a comment or question?
Commissioner Waldridge said everything that I needed to say. Thank you all. Joanna, once again, you knocked it out of the park like you always do.
I just want to say, from experience, I can't recall when I found out about the march, like what age I was, but I do think I can remember being taught about Martin Luther King, Dr. King, and it is amazing that wouldn't come up naturally in the education. And by the way, children, he came here. Right. Him and his crew came here, so I think it's very incredible. And same thing, I mean, the personal connection. I always knew Mr. Joe Smith as somebody who worked at the coffee shop that came in and got coffee, and I have no idea until right now that he was involved. I mean, so it's amazing.
When you hear his interview, he talked about helping people go in the right direction. He said, we set them up in this direction, and he was a U of L student at the time.
Crucial work. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll take us, now we're moving on to action items. And we have a first reading tonight, looking for a sponsor. And sponsored by Commissioner May.
An ordinance amending Chapter 72 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances regarding parking regulations. This ordinance amends Chapter 72 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances related to parking to, 1, reference the KYTC functional classification map rather than the Frankfort Comprehensive Plan, 2, change the minimum time limit for parking certain oversized vehicles from 6 hours to 2 hours upon obtaining a special permit, 3, update throughout to provide the city parking operator with authority over parking-related actions and enforcement, 4, update the requirements for impoundment to reference the applicable state law requirements, 5, incorporate by reference the downtown parking manual, which shall contain most city parking regulations, 6, delete requirements related to 2-hour parking and jury duty parking and instead refer to the downtown parking manual, 7, clarify that loading, unloading locations will be established by the city manager, and 8, update the appeals process.
Thank you. Any discussion on this first reading parking ordinance?
I think we had plenty earlier. I think we're good. I think that's why we were able to get it all out, so we could just go through with the reading, Mayor.
If there is none, we will move on to
I know, right?
action item number 6.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Staff requests permission to submit a 2023 National Endowment of the Arts grants for arts projects in the amount of $50,000 for the creation of a mural in the off-street portion of the transit center. This project is in conjunction with the Frankfort Arts and Cultural Master Plan, a strategic plan. Just please know, and I know there's some questions about how much, we generally do not receive the full amount that we request because this is a one-for-one match. So if we, receive 25,000, the match will be 25,000. But in our history, we've never received the full amount, and we had to wait until we had everything settled up with the transit center because this would go on the inside where the transit center offices are.
Any discussion on this? Well, we'll consider a motion, I suppose.
So, no question.
Yes.
So is this something that needs to be done right now because it needs to be done as we're building the parking garage, or is it something that we can gain and continue to save or continue to find other ways to pay for this since it's going to be a while till we get to that? Because I say that because I have the budget in first and foremost of us going into this deficit of 2024, and every dollar counts right now, and we continue to add on to that deficit and increasing. So is this something that we can say yes to, but we can still try to find other grants to help offset some of this expense of this 100,000? Because like you just said, we may not get the full 50, which we wouldn't match 50, but it's $100,000 grant. So if we only get 20, that means we have to match 20, meaning we would be coming up with another 60.
No,
Or,
just dollar for dollar. If the
Okay.
NEA gives us 25,000, we just match it with 25,000.
Okay.
And the reason why we're bringing this up now, because the deadline is the 21st of February.
Mhm.
So that's why we're doing an action item now.
The project cost is 100,000.
No, we are gonna apply for $50,000, a
Mhm.
grant. If we receive 50,000, we would have to match it with 50,000, which would be a
Right.
total
Okay, I see what you're
100,000.
saying. Okay.
The inside wall there, I should have explained this better. The inside wall has about 4 panels.
Mhm.
So if we do all 4 of them altogether, it would probably be roughly $100,000. But like I said, we have never gotten fully funded by NEA. They always like
Mhm.
cut it in half. So my guess is that they'll give us 25, which will mean we have a $50,000 budget. So we can do some of the panels and then, maybe the other ones later on. But they won't award us until the fall. Like, we're not gonna know
Okay.
next month that we get this money. It'll be like
Right.
October, November
You gotta
before we
go through
find
the
out.
process. Yeah. So when you say the panels, so the panels can be done. So if we want to set aside a few months from now and do another panel, we can do that.
Right.
Or
right.
apply for another grant for that particular panel
Right.
and do that. Okay.
Is
Thank
the
you.
intent to get private funding for that match, or can we get private funding?
We
for
can
that
get
match?
private funding, just any local funding will be, yeah.
Okay.
But however we want to do it.
Thank you.
Any other, no?
Motion to approve.
Motion, Commissioner Walters?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Unger. Is there any other discussion or questions?
Yeah.
One quick question. I know you say that we never get it, but if we do, are we gonna, back to you, Commissioner Walters' point, are we prepared to accept it all? Or can we say, hey, we appreciate that, but actually we just want to go for 25,000?
We can, they're also 2-year grants, so we ought to do like maybe one year and one the next year.
Right. That's what I
Okay.
like.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I was
Okay.
thinking.
And we'd really fight for
So we can do another
private
panel,
funding.
another, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Good.
And maybe able to work with Yes Arts and Josephine. Go ahead.
And we have a motion and a second. No other discussion. I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes, motion carries.
Our final action item tonight, staff is requesting approval from the Board of Commissioners for the contracts with signs, etc. We recently got approval from KYTC to bring this forward. It's been I know everybody's been waiting a long time for our wayfinding. As you guys may recall, this is part of the Transportation Alternative Program grant match. It's 80-20. The city will be, for fabrication and installation, the city will match $75,000, which we've already budgeted. So the first step will be fabrication, and then we will have to do a separate bid for installation.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion, Commissioner Walters, second, Commissioner May. Any discussion or questions?
Call for a vote.
Clerk, call for a vote, please.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Unger?
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge?
Yes.
Commissioner May?
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson?
Yes, motion carries. So we'll finish with action items now and move on to a discussion of the tentative agenda for the February voting meeting. I think we have a parking ordinance, second reading, maybe the TAP grant. What else do we have? Yes.
Mayor, last time we were discussing potential items, I think we had asked staff to look at a potential ordinance relating to the participation in the national opioid settlement. I would like to have an update on that, and if it is potentially ready to go, I'd like for it to be on the agenda for the first reading. In addition to that, I would like for Madam City Manager to consider discussing with local law enforcement a growing issue that we would call gas station drugs that involves Delta 8, Delta 9, Kratom, a drug by the name of Zaza, which contains tyanapatine, and these are commonly used by folks who have opioid addictions, and they use this as free heroin, if you will. And I worry greatly that we are allowing that in our community, and while I know there is not a statewide ban on these things, I would ask for law enforcement and the legal staff to consider a potential ban in our community.
Just wanted to offer that on Thursday, we're gonna have a meeting in the
Great.
community with ASAP, city and county stakeholders on the opioid settlement. So once we have that meeting, I'll be able to update everyone. And I know you also was looking at a resolution as well.
Yes, Commissioner Unger. Sorry.
I think Mr. Cockley had said that zoning update committee was the 21st. Do you
Yes.
think we'd be ready to discuss anything about the short-term rentals?
Maybe. If it's a moratorium, maybe we have to do it anyway without. It's not saying we're going to do it.
Right, okay.
Anything else? Yes, Commissioner Waters?
Yes, I'd like to look into adding the resolution in regards to Senate Bill 50 and House Bill 50, which came at our KLC board meeting in regards to Senator Thayer leading the charge of trying to take local politics and make them partisan. I think for myself and for most of KLC and we had an overall vote as the mayor's part of that board as well in regards to supporting, non-supporting this bill, and that partisan does not need to be on the local level. And so there is a resolution that we're passing around now. I'd like for us to look at that and try to change that and get that out to all the commissioners and the mayor to look over. I'd like Frankfort to support a resolution that is opposed to the Senate Bill 50 and the House Bill 50, as politics locally need to stay nonpartisan. This is not about a D and a R. This is about our local residents, and this is about our community. And we do not need to be decisive or divided even more by a D and a R. So I do not support this bill, and I would hope that our commission as well. Do keep in mind, as the commission, if you are aware, we do have the legal right, as the mayor can also support that if we did want, we do have that option to turn ourselves into partisan if we wish, and we have not done that, nor do we need to look into that. So I think that this is more in regards to them trying to control the school boards, and if anything does not need to be partisan, it would be our education. And so I say that please read over that House bill. I'll get a resolution out and work on that with Laura and get some things together and try to get it out so you guys can read over it. But we have to make sure that we do not support that as a community. So I'd like to put that on there so we can move that forward, because the session is in. They start at January 3rd. And that session, they return, they'll return, they start in tomorrow. The veto time is March the 17th through the 28th. And then March the 30th is the signing of bills. So I'd ask that we get that in as soon as possible, being that deadline, and it is a very short session. So
Take that up at the voting meeting. Any
Yes.
other business before we go into executive session?
the only other thing, Mayor, is that I also have been working on a revision of our ordinance. I've spoken with Attorney Ross on this in regards to our signage for election. I'd like for us to sort of mimic what the county has, so our county and city can be on one accord when it comes to political signs, and the possibility of looking at the signage, the size of the signage. But we also have to look back at that KRS and to make sure that we're not stepping on any toes as far as that. So I've been working on that and getting some information from Ms. Ross as well. But I'd like for us to look at that and hopefully maybe I'll try to have a rough draft. So it may just be a discussion item, not anything to approve at this time. But I would like us to move forward as the election time is here and it's already peaking in the county. And I would like us to do that as the 8x4s seem to be very large when it comes to our city ways and public right-of-ways for us to avoid accidents and things of that. So if we could look into that, I'd like that to be a discussion item so we can get on one accord with that. And I've been speaking with Judge Mueller in that as well because he would like our ordinances to mimic each other. So that's all I have.
Commissioner Thompson.
I would ask that the commission consider a resolution to have a regular set meeting, whether it be quarterly or otherwise, with the county officials, a joint meeting.
Well, we can take that up in another discussion.
That's that just for the.
Any others? Okay. Not, we can.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, can I just ask for clarification, because we've got a lot going on.
Oh, sorry.
So, no, I just want to make sure I'm doing what you all want me to do, because a lot of this is mine. The opioid ordinance we'll talk about after, it sounds like after the meeting.
Yes.
The gas station drugs for law enforcement and legal to work on. When would you all like a report back on that?
Can we talk, is this something that we have to decide tonight whether or not we want you to spend your time doing it?
Well, actually, that's a question, is whether or not.
I can follow up to the will of the board.
Right, are we gonna have a discussion about this tonight is the question?
I don't.
We can follow. I can follow back up
to
with the
start
this
commissioners
discussion?
individually.
I would just like to start the discussion. I think this is going to be something that's going to take a while, and
I think we should put it on an agenda and then have it, that way we have
Okay,
time.
working item.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
working item.
Research and
Yes.
things.
Right, let's put it on for a discussion item and then we can.
Okay,
If that's the will of the board, we could see if we don't tell us not to do it, then.
And Madam Solicitor, I'm happy to assist with
Sure.
the research that I have to.
Thank you. And then the resolution, any of these that just need to be going on for the, I guess my question is for the regular meeting. Do we have any of the resolution?
Maybe opioid, right?
Or HB 50?
HB 50,
I have
I
a-
think
I have
that
an
seems like
example
that'd
of
be.
one.
HB 50.
HB 50 and Senate Bill 50, they're both the same, so they're not too different. They're just one for the House and one for the Senate. And that's just in regards to that. And I have one that JD Cheney sent out.
Gotcha.
So I'll send that over so you guys can start looking at it and help just change. I would say that a lot probably wouldn't be because he sent that out to all the cities today.
Okay, thank you. I'll just making sure I have you down for the February voting meeting, whatever needed to be done. Thank you.
But that one is the only one that I was trying to get ready for that. But yes. Other
Thank
than
you.
that,
I have,
oh, sorry.
Yes.
are we
Commissioner
still,
Hendrick.
so we're still in
Other
other
business?
business? This is not tentative agenda.
Well,
I've,
well, we skipped,
Sorry.
what would you like to see on the
Sorry.
agenda?
no, this is other business.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. I've had a few residents reach out about construction noise on the weekends. I'm pretty sure that this noise, and it's all downtown. Got a lot going on downtown right now, and it's really great. But I know some of the full-time residents downtown are getting a little tired of some of the Sunday morning, like 7:30 wake-up calls for them. I think it falls in line with our noise ordinance. Just wondering if there's anything we can do. So, that's all.
We'll follow back up. There's been some other complaints on different ones at
Yeah.
other locations too.
Thank you.
Clarify.
And
other business. I just want to announce that KET will be broadcasting tonight in regards to House Bill and Senate Bill 50. Several people will be talking in regards to a lot of legislation that's going on. So if you are not aware and need an update, tune into KET tonight at 8 o'clock. You will, Senator, I think Neil will be there, Reggie, I think Senator Thomas. So several people will be there and speaking on this, as well as Senator Thayer. So tune in. Other than that,
We may make it live. We may be able to watch it live.
I know, I'm excited. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session, KRS 61.8101F, personnel discussion of employees' requests for a hearing, and KRS 61.8101C, litigation related to Kyle Thompson and claims brought against the city. Action may be taken in open session.
Second.
Okay, motion to go into executive session and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're now in executive session. Anybody like to take about 5 minutes?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to uphold the city manager's recommendation not to hold a hearing per requested.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner May, second Commissioner Unger. Any discussion? If none, I'll ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes. Motion carries.
Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to direct legal counsel to communicate with Kyle Thompson's legal counsel as discussed in closed session in regarding to proceeding with the appeal.
Second.
Motion Commissioner Waldridge and second Commissioner Unger. No discussion. I ask the clerk to call for a vote.
Commissioner Thompson,
Abstain.
Commissioner Unger,
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Yes.
Commissioner May,
Yes.
Mayor Wilkerson.
Yes. Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor to adjourn say aye.
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 All right, we're adjourned.
Your pen.
You know,